Easter. Easter is the festival of the risen, living Christ, the head of the spiritual hierarchy, the inaugurator of the kingdom of God and the expression of the love of God. On this day, the spiritual hierarchy, which he guides and directs, will be universally recognized. Man's relationship to it will be emphasized, and the nature of God's love will be registered. Men and women everywhere will invoke that love with its power to produce resurrection and spiritual livingness. Our meditation this morning was doing just that, don't you think? Yeah, it was very active, very powerful, and certainly igniting of the possibilities that we have within ourselves to contribute love to our family, to our group, to our humanity, as opposed to hatred and malice and revenge and all of those ugly things that always seem to be right in front of our face. Today, the day of Easter, the day of resurrection, we as a group, we as those who are watching our YouTube today, we have the challenge, we have the charge to now take the next step out into the world, and we're going to be that beacon of light that resurrects humanity, which means to give them new life, not to be that old-fashioned self, but the new self, and to take that new self that we are becoming today as a beacon of light out into the world to bring hope, to bring faith, to bring love, to teach people about hierarchy, that this planet is so worth it all that the hierarchy has remained with us during all the trials and tribulations of the early 1900s, and now into the 2000s, hierarchy has not abandoned us. They are staying with us. So if hierarchy continues to love us, no matter what, then let us be a reflection of hierarchy and love our enemies no matter what. Show them God's love. Show them the love of Christ, starting with today and all the days of the rest of our lives. Now, Easter, the Easter festival is determined always by the date of the full moon of spring, which was this past week, tax day, April 15th. There has to be a symbol in there somewhere. The eyes and the thoughts of humanity must be fixed on life, not death. This is an esoteric fact of resurrection. The eyes and thoughts of humanity must be fixed on life, not death. Good Friday will no longer be a factor in the life of the churches. Easter will be the great Western festival. The celebration of Easter is a celebration of resurrection. The most recognized activity with Easter is the fact of resurrection. It was by the resurrection of the Christ that humanity was to gain knowledge. Think about this, that even today, this story of Jesus and the resurrection, the whole meaning of that story was for us to gain knowledge about the continuity of life, about advancement, about progress, about the other worlds. The knowledge there is no death for the person who would walk with on the path of the Master. So if we are walking on the path of the Master, if we feel in our heart this magnificent outpouring of the higher ashram, if we have even a glimpse of the magnificent power and beauty and love of hierarchy, then how can we think of death? There is no death. There is the continuity of life. The path of the Master is the one path demonstrated by all great ones sent to earth by God to illumine us, to illumine humanity. Resurrection is a fundamental theme of all the world religions, past, present, future. So what is resurrection? What are we resurrecting? You know, this is a very valid question, and a question that we need to understand, and so there's a very short answer. We are resurrecting the spirit that is within us. And with so many people, that spirit is dead, or seemingly dead. It's just covered by the layers and layers and layers of pain and suffering and hatred and malice and revenge and jealousy and competition, and I'm better than you are, and my country is better than your country, and I am smarter than you are, and all these things that we learn as we are in incarnation. And in this process, our spirit becomes buried in matter. And so Easter, actually, you know, the spring equinox, alongside Easter for the esoteric tradition, is the tradition that says, wait, you know, you're more than hatred and jealousy and competition and ugliness and so forth, that you have this incredible spirit within you. Resurrect your spirit. The resurrection of the spirit is the objective of the entire evolutionary process and involves liberation from materialism and selfishness. So this is what we are about. And if you kind of slipped a little bit, you can remind yourself today that what we are about, what I am about, what the group is about, what humanity is about, when we come into this planet, is the resurrection of the spirit, not the killing of life. The note and message sounded by the Christ when last on earth was resurrection. But so morbid has been humanity and its immersion in glamour and illusion, the emphasis upon life has been laid on what? Death. Resurrection is only acclaimed on the day Easter, on the day of Easter, or at the cemetery. This must change. Religion must teach about the resurrection of spirit on a daily basis, not just once a year, and not just at the cemetery. The meaning of resurrection, we believe, the teaching believes, is going to unfold this century, and its true significance is going to be realized. We must stop burying ourselves in death, in materialistic goals, and in selfishness. This will be done through the resurrection of our divinity. It's interesting how life unfolds and things come to us when there's a need. Last night, I guess it was about 10 or 10:30, all of a sudden I heard the siren of a fire truck going up the street. And the irony was that about 5-10 minutes prior to that, I was outside with the puppies and enjoying the magnificent sky we had last night, all the stars and so forth. And I smelled smoke, and I thought, wow, what's that all about? And because it wasn't cold enough to have a fire in the fireplace. Never did get that resolved, actually, but I think it was a sign, because it wasn't but a few minutes later the ambulance came up and So the fire truck and the ambulance, and later another ambulance parked next door to my neighbor. And I was standing out there, and I thought, no, I can't, I don't want to stand out here. You know, they need their privacy. So I went into the house, and I thought about resurrection. And in that process, I'm pretty sure that their mom must have passed, and because they've been taking care of her. And so I just sat there in prayer and about resurrection, thinking about the divinity of this dear woman's life and moving into the celebration of life, you know, not this sadness, you know, of her passing. So wasn't that an opportunity? Yeah, I was so grateful that I had something I could do to help them, you know, without interfering with all the EMTs and, you know, the trauma that was going on. So we must stop burying ourselves in death. It is through the reconstruction of our life from the material to the spiritual that we are going to be born again. We want to reconstruct our lives out of the substance of our spirit, out of the substance of our divine heritage, not from our past mistakes, not from our darkness, not from our glamours, not from our illusions. I think one of the highlights for me of the teaching is how we are admonished not to wallow in guilt, not to turn our face to the past, but to the future, to think about our possibilities. Not that we're going to be sick and infirmed in our, you know, aging years, but that we are going to be wise and stronger and healthier and be able to do more, to have freedom to engage in more opportunities to resurrect humanity than to be dwelling in our home and visiting cemeteries because more and more of our friends have passed. Isn't that gruesome? This is not the teaching. The teaching is about life. The teaching is about resurrection. And that's one of the esoteric facts of the Easter tradition is life, is resurrection. We must not construct our lives out of the substance of money, out of the substance of power, greed, and hatred, but from the beauty of the central sun, the sun as reflected in the heart of Christ and other great ones, those who are recognized as the enlightened sons and daughters of God. Let their lives be reflected in our hearts. So the heart, it is the heart that is the path of resurrection, the path that leads us to the cosmic heart of the universe and returns our soul to the Father's home. There is the greatest ideal of freedom in the words given to us by the Christ. He said, "Take your cross and follow after me." I found it interesting to read about this and learned in the teaching that it means that the cross is symbolic of our past incarnations. So when you see these movies in TV and on the screen, and you see Christ carrying the cross, and now you see all the followers of Christianity, you know, imitating that and carrying the cross on their shoulder, it will give you a different meaning. And this is the esoteric facts of the Easter tradition. The cross is symbolic of our past incarnations. Let us take our karma through the events of all those who were sent to earth by God to show us the way, the path of initiation, which the wisdom teachings tell us are the birth of Bethlehem. The birth of Bethlehem is the realization of the call of our inner presence. The baptism initiation, which is the purification of the emotional body. The transfiguration is the initiation of enlightenment, where we unfold our higher mind and receive a vision of our true essence. We become flooded with a great light and love from our chalice. The fourth initiation is the crucifixion initiation. Sometimes this fourth initiation is also called the renunciation. The transfiguration initiation is also described as the wilderness experience. What is the disciple renouncing? Renunciation from the selfishness of the personality. In the Orient, the great renunciation is known as the sacrifice, and its call to the death of the lower nature. This was the lesson which St. Paul knew of, and the goal towards which he strove. He said, I die daily. See, that's been totally misunderstood. He said, for only in the practice of death daily undergone can the final death be met and endured. And this, then, is the crucifixion. The fifth initiation is the revelation, although sometimes it is called resurrection. However, resurrection, in fact, is the seventh initiation. The revelation stage of consciousness or initiation is where we meet our true self and become the embodiment of will and power. We become a member of the great brotherhood of Sirius. This is the stage, this fifth initiation, is the stage of self-mastery. The sixth stage is the path that is called the decision, where the master must choose between the 7 paths of higher evolution to determine his field of service. Now that's the sixth initiation. This occurs every 49 years for the master. It occurred, or masters. It occurred in 1952, this stage called the stage of decision, and is presently believed to be the most immediate occurrence, which was in 2001-2002. This great decision. Once this great decision occurs, tremendous changes occur on the planet because of the energy. They release or withdraw this energy due to their position on the planet. You understand? Think about it. The seventh initiation, the seventh stage, is the true resurrection initiation, in which the soul finds his way back to the Father. Now the cross. The cross symbolizes the 4 elements of our personality, our physical, etheric, emotional, and mental elements. To achieve freedom from this cross, we all must go through the crucifixion. The step prior to the crucifixion initiation, you know, is the initiation we call transfiguration, where we have become purified in all of our motives and freed from our heavy karma. It is at this stage where the initiate is able to consciously contact the light of the inner presence and becomes infused with that most beautiful light. Through the process of purification, the human soul becomes conscious of and is oriented toward the highest goals, living a life of pure service. So you can tell as we go through the first 2 initiations, you know, it really is what I call the cleanup stage, okay? Then the true, really intense, progressive, advancing initiations for our unfolding human soul begin at the 3rd or transfiguration initiation. And this is why the Tibetan master and all the great teachers of the wisdom teaching call this third initiation really the first. Okay, now this first initiation has tremendous impact on our spirit. When Christ said, "Take your cross and follow after me," he was instructing us to travel the path of illumination and freedom. If we are seeking self-realization, there will come a point in our life where we as a human soul must realize that we must undergo crucifixion, where we seek emancipation from the cross, as Christ did. The greatest victory in this earthly world is not to die on the cross, but to resurrect ourselves from the cross. Again, this is an esoteric fact. What part of us then is going to experience crucifixion? Yeah, it's the lower nature. Crucifixion is to totally dominate and conquer our lower nature. When we conquer our lower nature, then we are in freedom. It is only in freedom that we really, truly exist. And you can see that in your personal life. When you're going through trials and tribulations and pain and suffering, and you see this pain and suffering all around you, see, this is not freedom. This is when you feel enslaved, when you feel like you can't open that door and walk out, that the door is locked and you're stuck, right? But we have Easter. Once a year we have Easter. We have the vernal equinox. We can say, this is the day of resurrection. And we can clean up what's happened this past year so we can have increasing freedom. And we can unlock that door, open it, and walk out into the light, which is walking out into freedom. Remember, Christ said, "You are God's, and the Most High lives within you." This means if God is within us, we can do anything. The Christ within us can free us from our jealousies, our petty thoughts, our inferiority complexes, from our hopelessness, from our despair, even free us from all of our stupidities. We are here to try to free ourselves and to free others. It is such a wonderful experience and a wonderful joy to see people free. Buddha, another son of God, said, all of you have the Buddha nature within you, right? So what is the Buddha nature? It is the universal spirit. That's the Buddha nature. It's the universal spirit, wisdom, love, and beauty. So we must crucify our lower nature, our depressions, our complexes, our slavery, and achieve freedom from all these things. There is a most beautiful story that I know most of you have heard, but it bears repeating on Easter. This is a story about St. Sergius, who gave an example of Christ's words. He said, "Do not worry about what you are going to eat tomorrow." So you can write that down. Do not worry about what you're going to eat tomorrow. Eat can be a reality, but it can be a metaphor as well, symbolic of other things other than food. So here's a story. Some of St. Sergius's monks began to complain to him that he had built his hermitage too far from the sufficient supply of water. St. Sergius said to them, well, I wanted to live alone, but God wanted to establish a monastery to the glory of his name. So then he left the monastery, accompanied by one monk, going down into a little ravine where there was a little water left from the rain. St. Sergius knelt down and prayed. Then he blessed the spot, and suddenly a plentiful spring shot up, which supplied water for the monastery up to the present day. Here's another example. Once the monastery was once again without bread for several days, and some of the monks requested permission to go ask for bread in the neighboring villages. They said, we have followed you, we have obeyed your orders, but tomorrow we are going to look for food. And we're not going to return because we cannot bear the poverty and lack of food in this place. They were reminded of the words of Christ then from the gospel, and St. Sergius reproached them for their lack of faith. St. Sergius, in speaking from Matthew, said, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet the Heavenly Father feeds them. As St. Sergius was talking to the monks, someone knocked on the door. The gatekeeper looked through the opening and saw a cart full of food. St. Sergius bade them to come to open the gate and receive the goods. 2 carts entered. St. Sergius could not eat anything, or would not eat anything, but instead, well, you can imagine, went to thank God first. Only after giving thanks did he bless the breads and distribute them to the entire community. On the 2 days following, large quantities of food continued to arrive. From that day on, there was never any discontent amongst the monks over food or water, even though they were lacking it from time to time. You see, they were resurrected from their doubts and from their complaints and their lack of faith. They became enlightened by the illumined of the life of St. Sergius. So resurrection for us today is the process of resurrecting ourselves in a continuous manner, moving steadily toward the union with our true self. Resurrection is the process of spiritualizing ourselves. Isn't that interesting? Of spiritualizing ourselves. See, the ignorant think they are already spiritual if they open up the Bible and they can talk about the 36,000 verses in the Bible, that makes them spiritual. But that's not an esoteric fact. Resurrection today is a process of resurrecting ourselves in a continuing manner, moving steadily toward a union with our true self. It is a process of spiritualizing ourself, transmuting, which means transmuting the lower nature with the light and beauty and love of the higher nature, becoming more spirit than matter. A resurrected consciousness is one whose life is focused in the higher worlds, where he serves in the lower worlds. That. It is a process of resurrection which creates a spiritual balance for the serving disciple. So a disciple cannot be a balanced individual without resurrection of the spirit. It is in resurrection that we are going to gain victory over darkness, to gain victory over all that is not serving the life of our soul, To gain victory means to what? To use the outer world. To gain victory means to use the outer world, the outer life, as a vehicle, or you could say a school for transformation, as a vehicle for enlightenment. Isn't that beautiful? That we're really seeing the purpose of incarnation. So in conclusion, we are on that path of resurrection. Resurrection will lead us into a new and higher dimension, into the inner world of reality and right energy. It is a world in which only the spiritual body can function, and only the intuitive, developed eye of spirit can see. It cannot be perceived by those whose inner perception is unawakened. See, when that inner perception is unawakened, we are blind. We are blind, even though we may have a genius IQ, even though we may be ahead of state, even though we may be in the top 20 list of most richest people in the world. It does not make any difference if we are not awakened and our intuition sleeps. When the spiritual body begins to be organized and to grow, and when the intuitive eye slowly opens and trains itself to see truly, then there will come the indications that the seed of divinity of Christ latent in each human soul is beginning to control and to lead the developing spark into the world of spiritual being, true meaning, and essential values. This world is called, and this is the last esoteric fact I'm giving you today, this world is called the super mundane. It is the world of souls. And when manifested is that expression of divine life, which we can call the fifth kingdom in nature. It is through the process then of initiation that this world stands revealed. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to experience and celebrate Holy Communion. From the teaching, it tells us Holy Communion means that we are participating in the ideas, the visions, and the future infinite ideas of Christ for human liberation. When you are taking Holy Communion, it is not the bread, it is not the wine. It is the great vision that Christ brought to humanity for the perfection of the human being. Holy Communion is a moment in which you make a great wish. In that wish, you also unite with the Spirit, with the presence of Christ. Hold that thought in your mind until your mental body, emotional body, etheric body, and physical body absorbs that vision.